It is 6:30. We'll go ahead and call our meeting to order, February 3rd meeting of Alleghany County Commissioners. If you would, all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Father, we thank thee, Lord, for this day. It's been some beautiful weather, Lord, and we just give thee thanks for it, Lord. Lord, we thank everyone for coming out tonight to participate in our meeting. It's a good feeling to see such a crowd out tonight. Be with us and be with us. Give us the strength and the knowledge, the wisdom we need, Lord, to carry on for the betterment of our county. We give thee all the praise and all the glory, for we ask these blessings in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. We need to amend the agenda to include the job description.
Move. Under general business, sir?
Yes, sir. General business.
What did we put in there?
Job description. Get a motion on. A motion on.
A motion we accept as modified.
Motion and a second to modify. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Vote. So everyone had a chance to look over the minutes from the 12/20/19 meeting and the 1/6 of 20, the work session.
I have no questions or objections, Mr. Chairman.
I hear a motion.
So move. Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. 5-0. At this time, we're going to open the floor for public comment. You have 3 minutes to make your comments. Try to keep it on different topics about our resolution here, and we'll entertain anybody coming up to speak.
Drew's keeping separate clock.
Talk about suicide. Ever since I've come to this county, I've been concerned about the number of people. I couldn't sleep. I was on the internet. People from how all the rates of suicide. 1979 to 2011, and I could compare them. We were number one. We had the highest average rate of suicide. Startling as that figure is, another statistic that I just stumbled upon recently concerns me even more. According to the CDC, from 1999 to 2017, we had 43 suicides. Of those 43, 29 were from firearms. That was more disturbing to me because I could put names and faces on these suicides. I knew these people. Some of these people would be here tonight if they hadn't taken their own life. Many times I've laid awake at night and thought about my friend, why he put a gun to his head. I wish I could have been there and said, give me that arm. Let me hold it while you get yourself some help. And when you get better, you come to me and I'll get that firearm back. On the November issue of Time magazine, they had a long article devoted to suicide. One of the things they said is no one thing is going to bring the rate down, but if a community will do multiple things, it can impact that rate. And one of the things that they mentioned was a program that encouraged family members and friends, if they had someone who was depressed, despondent, and considering suicide, they would ask them to voluntarily give up their firearm, or in some cases pills. All the time is when they got better. One of the things about suicide is that it's not a death sentence. I went through a period of depression. I thought about taking my own life. I went and saw a counselor. I went to my doctor. I got some medication. I'm better. I'm fine. I'm a happy man. Suicide is not a death sentence. You can get better. But if you have that impulse and you act on it, you won't get better. You know what I'm talking about? Help me out here, folks. How many of you know someone, have a friend or family member who's taken their own life? Would you stand up? Stay standing for just a second. How many of you know 2 people? Stay standing. Everybody else sit down. 3 people. What I mean. So what I'm asking you tonight, I stand here in support of the Constitution and in support of the Second Amendment. What I'm asking of you tonight is to include in your resolution one of 2 statements. The first one is, in light of this county's high suicide rate, we encourage firearms owners who are contemplating taking their own lives for their own safety to voluntarily place their firearms in the hands of a trusted friend or family member for temporary storage until that crisis is past. Second statement is not quite as strong as that one. Either one would make me, I'm putting before this body. In light of this county's high suicide rate, this resolution is not opposed to efforts to encourage firearm owners who are contemplating taking their own lives for their own safety to voluntarily place their firearms in the hands of a trusted friend or family member for temporary storage until the crisis is past. I've talked about this with friends, and they say, don't bring this up in the meeting. They'll think you're trying to take away their guns. I think you guys are smarter than that. You can tell when somebody's trying to take away your guns and when somebody's trying to save a life. Other friends have said, well, it doesn't belong there, it belongs someplace else. Maybe on the back page of the newspaper in small type when nobody will see it. We're making a statement about standing up for gun owners' rights. I think we need to say something about standing up for gun owners' lives. That's my request to you tonight. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. We will
I'm
come.
Bob Bamberg, and I'm speaking for myself as a private citizen.
We'll come back to that issue. We're in public comment, and we'll go ahead and ask Sheriff Maines if he has something he'd like to say. Add any comments?
You know, a couple of weeks ago, I stood before you, and I was asked to come up here by the chairman. And I've spoken with the chairman several times since then, and we had a conversation earlier today about this, and you know, I really can't add a lot to my statements from a couple of weeks ago, but I would like to say again some of the things that I said. Alleghany County, you know, we're a small rural county, and where togetherness is our bond, so we remember things a lot. You know, and it goes back to the school days that I spoke of, you know, pledging allegiance to the flag. And whenever you get to the part where it says, "and to the republic for which it stands," you know, that republic is a form of government. We're pledging our allegiance to that. That is our form of government. And what backs that form of government up is our Constitution. It's our Constitution. It is the supreme law of this land. And any law that any body makes that does not go with that is unconstitutional and can't be addressed. It cannot be enforceable. So I really think that it's important that counties across North Carolina stand up and really support the Constitution of the United States of America. I think, you know, over the last, I was looking at my dates this morning, you know, I started serving the citizens of Alleghany County as a law enforcement officer in 1992. That was 28 years ago. And almost every day, we have to make a decision in our jobs on constitutional issues. as it deals with the Bill of Rights. It can be Fourth Amendment issues, search and seizure issues. You know, it can be things like freedom of speech, which I'm going with today. There may be some other citizens that may get up here and they may voice opposition to this, but you know what? They have that First Amendment right too to do that. So I think as we're standing up supporting the Second Amendment, you know, we also need to realize, hey, there's some folks that has the First Amendment right too. And but I do appreciate the leadership of this board. I appreciate Chairman Osborne for his leadership. I know I spoke with several citizens out in the community about this, and you wouldn't believe the people that says, yeah, I've already talked to Bill about it. So I do appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. And, you know, it's not just Mr. Chairman, it's just the rest of the board, too. I've heard several different folks saying how they appreciate our board standing up for their constitutional rights. And I want you to remember one thing, board and citizens. Constitution, and specifically the Bill of Rights, the reason we have the Bill of Rights is to protect these folks from us folks. And that's basically the gist of it, to be as simplistic as I can be about it. It's to protect them. It's protections of their freedom. And I believe truly and honestly that that's what you guys are going to have in mind whenever you're casting that vote today. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you. We encourage anybody to keep coming on up. You got 3 minutes and say what you want to say. And
Good evening. My name is Eddie Prince, and I urge you to pass the resolution to support our constitutional rights. If you're here today to support the passage, I'd ask that everyone who would encourage them to pass it stand up while we give this speech and show them how many people, how many of our citizens took the time out of our busy schedule to come here and to say how important this issue is to them. I served 10 years in the Army National Guard. And I see a lot of my fellow brothers and sisters here from other branches, but the thing that makes the Army National Guard different from the other branches of government, it's the one branch of our military that is trained and authorized to deploy on American soil. I've been through many exercises over those 10 years in which we practiced and drilled and studied crowd control. And when the one common thing is when we finished with those exercises, we would all sit around and we talked about, you know, we never want to be put in this position. We don't want to point our weapons at our brothers and sisters, our fellow citizens. And we depend on government to never let that happen. And this movement and what we're seeing that has come out of Virginia essentially is a grassroots movement where the people do not want to be put in that position, and that's why we're asking you to pass this resolution. Over my career, I've pledged my support to the state and federal constitution. I'm here tonight to voice my support for state and federal constitutional rights. Many don't know that Section 30 of the North Carolina Constitution is very similar to the Second Amendment. In fact, the language is almost identical. I'll quote, Section 30 of the North Carolina Constitution states, government shall not infringe, oops, I apologize, let me jump back. Section 30 of the North Carolina Constitution states, quote, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, end quote. It's very similar to the Second Amendment. The many law-abiding citizens in Alleghany County that need to be supported with this resolution. In America, the states are the laboratory of our democracy. If we look around the country, we could see what other states and other cities have done when they've infringed upon the Second Amendment right. If all you have to do is look to an average weekend in Chicago, Illinois, Now, we're not as big as they are, but they chose to infringe upon the rights of their citizens, and it's literally a war zone. We don't need Raleigh to experiment with our rights, and we're depending on you to vote to support this resolution. So, to preserve our safety and our freedom, please pass the constitutional rights protection.
Spoken.
Next, anybody else? I'll reiterate, we got 3-minute time limit there, if we can sort of hold it to that, maybe.
Just because I got I think they took all my time. I'm Mike DeBose. I live here in Alleghany County. Let me start with, I might have been the only one that didn't stand up. I'm not against the Second Amendment, so anybody upset. I support the Second Amendment. I'm here because I'm uncertain about the full meaning of your resolution. I've seen it in the agenda package, and I don't understand completely what action you're resolving to take under certain circumstances. I would like to note here in my 3 minutes my confusion as to those points, and ask that before you vote on the resolution, you clarify what specifically your intent is regarding these matters. At your last meeting, before the wording of the resolution was made available, your comments and the sheriff's comments seem to be limited expressions of support for the Constitution and the significance that the Constitution has to you. If the resolution means no more than this, then I certainly support it. The Constitution has the same significance to me. I believe that you said you made those feelings known when you took your oath of office. So I assume that you must believe that this resolution goes beyond just your statement of support for the Constitution. My concern is that perhaps this resolution also stands, well, this is not my concern, I'm sorry, but perhaps this resolution stands for your expression of belief that any restriction on the right to bear arms is unconstitutional. If that is the reason for the resolution, you are certainly entitled to express that opinion. However, if your intent is to inform the North Carolina and federal legislators that this is the opinion of the residents of Alleghany County, then I think it's a bit presumptuous, since there's been no vote, there's been no polling to determine the opinion of the Alleghany residents. Most importantly, I'm concerned that the resolution has an additional purpose. When I read the third to last paragraph, I get the sense that you're resolving to use your office to thwart in some way the enforcement of laws on the basis of your personal opinion that the law violates the Second Amendment. Surely this is not what you intend, for you must know that we as individuals, and even you as county commissioners, are not entitled to decide whether to obey or comply with a law based just on your belief that the law is unconstitutional, no matter how genuinely you hold that belief. For example, many people believe that our income tax is unconstitutional, despite it being authorized by the 16th Amendment. We put people in jail who don't pay their taxes, even though they believe it's unconstitutional. So before you vote on this resolution, I request that you clearly state how this resolution will guide you should you face the situation where legislation is enacted at the federal or state level that further restricts the right of gun ownership in some way. Specifically, what would you do if North Carolina enacted a ban on the sale of assault-style weapons and a gun store or individual in Alleghany County sold a weapon that met this definition? Would you encourage the sheriff in some way not to enforce the law? Should the sheriff comply with his duties regarding the enforcement of the law? Would you withhold funds from his office In any other way, would you discourage the exercise of his duties regarding the law? Does Ms. Shoemate, as legal counsel to the county, support the action that you would take under these scenario? This is my concern on the wording. I don't know what it means in this scenario. I certainly support the Second Amendment, but I also believe we live in a the Constitution provides individual rights, but we're forgetting that the Constitution also provides a form of government. That form of government provides how we determine what's constitutional. That form of government doesn't allow us to just not obey laws because we think they're unconstitutional. To me, that's lawlessness. That's anarchy. And I just hope your resolution does not go that far. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll get some, have them here. No, we'll have them here in just a minute. Yeah. Anybody else have any comments?
Chairman, may I give him my copy?
Gentlemen, Sherlon Smith. I'm not good at public speaking, but I'll speak what I believe. We should not forget that freedom was not free, and it will not be free to keep. Let's not forget our forefathers and what they fought and died for. From our independence to get us as a free nation, not only after fighting a revolution and winning our independence, worked diligently for, I may not be exactly on my numbers, 11 years to come up with a paper that all 13 colonies would sign called our Constitution. We should stand together united because now is the time to fight for our freedom, not after it's gone. We should look very closely at our leaders and their platforms and what they believe, what they stand for, because everybody knows they're going to tell you whatever they want you to hear to get voted into office, and then they do something different once they get in there. I urge every American to stand up united. United we stand, divided we fall. Now is the time to stand united for our country and our freedom and our rights.
Anybody else?
I'll vote more if more people.
Anybody can speak that wants to speak. We want everybody.
I've been here about 3 years now. Apologize.
You're welcome. Anybody's comments? He is gone to get some copies of this resolution. It won't be but a minute till we'll have those. Right here she is now.
Anyone want a copy? If you'd pass it to the gentleman to your left, Air Force gentleman.
Anybody else?
My name is Robert Melvin. I'm a resident of Alleghany County. I've been here now about 3 years. I spent 4 years in the United States Air Force. I'm proud of that. You can see my hat.
Thank you, sir.
I was what they called back then an air policeman, which was a cop that we had 48, 45s or 38s depending on the time that I was in. But we were well trained. We were told what to do. Totally believed in the Second Amendment. I think it's very simple. It tells you right there when you read it. Get all into a lot of extraneous stuff. That's how it gets confusing. I stand behind the Constitution the way it's written, and I hope you guys will get that way too. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My name's Dennis Budzik. I just moved here in April, and I've been a big backer of the Second Amendment around the Charlotte area where I came from. And I think what a lot of people are missing in the Second Amendment, and it states right in the Second Amendment, this shall not be infringed upon. So anything that you do as far as like magazine limitations for weapons, that's been infringement. Anything. Even I don't like them, I think they're ridiculous, but the bump stock issue, that was an infringement. It does not limit in the Second Amendment anything, it does not have specifics. There is nothing as an assault rifle. That doesn't even exist. Not even in the military do they call it an assault rifle. That is an infringement on our Second Amendment when they say assault rifles. These people are running scared. They're worried that we're going to take over when they try to take over. And we cannot allow them to take over. Now, as long as our sheriff is backing us on the Second Amendment, I feel that we should be allowed to back him. If he's going to enforce the Second Amendment, then we need to back him and be behind him. And I believe that's what the commissioners are trying to do, is to back our sheriff so that he won't be put in a position where he has to decide. Because he has to remember, he is an elected official. We put him in office. We can take him out of office. And we need to back him when he makes the right decision, and we need to be behind our commissioners also. But we also have to remember, there is no infringement, and that's the way it should be. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Next. Anybody else? If not, we'll close the public comment side of this and go back to Mr. Bamberg's request. Add one of these paragraphs onto the resolution. What's the feeling of the board?
Chairman, I would, I like the latter over the former. But I would like to ask Mr. Bamberg to consider the inclusion where it says opposed to efforts, not opposed to individual efforts. I'd like to add the word individual in there because that's a one-on-one thing. I don't know that that makes it or takes anything or adds to it, but that just struck me. You know, that is something that someone would know with their close friend, that they would be able to observe that. Yeah. That it doesn't look as though it's any kind of mass movement or anything. I don't have any problem with that. That's my thoughts, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would support, if that is a motion, I would second the motion, and I would support it. One thing, and everyone that spoke tonight spoke very well, but missed something. A little thing called Wounded Knee. The United States Army went on an Indian reservation and tried to disarm the Indians. 240 plus women, children, and warriors were shot because the men did not want to give up their means of providing meat to their family. Extremes go two ways, good and bad. Death of women and children, unforgivable. Used to and still have a jacket that I picked up on Okinawa. At the taste and fear of death, something that the protected may never know. If a government breaks down, it's going to be you. You're worried right now, you don't hear it. If a government brings a nuclear weapon into any port in the United States, or launches a missile, reaches a height sufficient to cover the United States, and that nuclear weapon goes off, it will produce what is known as an EMP. The EMP will fry every computer. Don't even have to use a nuclear weapon. CME, corneal mass ejection. Did it in 1859. Telegraph operators, which were about the only ones that were working with copper wire, were shocked. The tapes were caught on fire. If that event happens today, 1 year, and this is from the Department of Homeland Security, you can look it up. In 1 year, population that survives will be 10%, because the entire electrical grid will be down. How will you defend you and your family and provide the food if this happens? We talk about rights. This is survival. We have inalienable rights, and that is to survive. I support this amendment. And I support the inclusion of the second paragraph with the modification. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your indulgence.
Thank you, Commissioner Irwin. We have a motion to place this on the bottom of the resolution. We have a motion and a second.
I don't know that you did have a
Got a
motion.
question?
I don't
I
believe
just
he made
made a suggestion.
Bobby has a question before we get that far along. Go ahead.
Has this been run by Donna? Does it meet any requirements you have, or do you see any problems?
I don't see any problems. And to address one of the points brought up by Mr. DeBose, the last paragraph says that the Alleghany County government will utilize all legal means. We're not advocating illegal means, and including but not limited to legal action. So I think that that's one of the things that this resolution envisions, is perhaps an injunction to put the brakes on a law that we think might be unconstitutional until the right courts have a chance to rule on that. So, I approve the wording of this resolution,
Thank you.
With the inclusion, Madam?
even with the inclusion.
I'll make the motion that we include the second paragraph.
I will
the
second that
item
motion, sir.
In as modified.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand.
Just to clarify, we're motion just to include the second paragraph?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Second paragraph only. I vote. This time I'm going to read our resolution. We're going to take a vote. Whereas to acknowledge that the rights of individuals to keep and bear arms is under attack in the United States of America by elected officials for many legal levels of government. And whereas it is further recognized that the Constitution of the United States of America is the supreme law of the land, and the Second Amendment of the Constitution guarantees individuals have the rights to keep and bear arms in a manner that shall not be infringed, and whereas the Supreme Court of the United States has, through multiple rulings, upheld any individual rights to keep and bear arms, federal, state, and local laws have sought to restrict this rights. Whereas the right to bear arms is necessary for the self-defense, the defense of others, including family members, the protection of individual liberty, and for the preservation of our United States Constitution. Whereas many Americans believe that Second Amendment rights are God-given rights, and it is a law of nature that every creature can defend their lives from threats. And whereas the Alleghany County Board of Commissioners wishes to express its deep commitment to protecting Alleghany County citizens' Second Amendment rights, and whereas the Alleghany County Board of Commissioners wishes to express opposition to any law regarding or other acts that would infringe on the Second Amendment right of Alleghany County citizens. Whereas the Alleghany County Board of Commissioners expresses its intent for Alleghany County to stand as a constitutional rights protection county for Second Amendment rights by opposing any efforts by an entity to restrict these rights. Opposition may include any means available under the United States Constitution and the laws of North Carolina, including the withholding of funds, directions of county employees, legal action, and other means as deemed necessary and legal. Therefore, it be it resolved that the Alleghany County Board of Commissioners declares Alleghany County a Second Amendment constitutional right protection county and declares that Alleghany County government will respect and defend the Second Amendment rights of county citizens. The Alleghany County Board of Commissioners implores the North Carolina Legislature and the United States Congress to preserve, uphold, and protect the rights of all citizens to keep and bear arms under the United States Constitution. Further implores the North Carolina Legislature and the United States Congress to reject any provision, law, or regulations that may infringe, have the tendency to infringe, or place any additional burdens on the rights of law-abiding citizens to bear arms. Alleghany County government will not authorize or appropriate government funds, resources, employees, agencies, contractors, buildings, or other officers for the purpose of enforcing or assisting the gun confiscation or other restrictions that infringe on the rights to keep and bear arms by law-abiding citizens as expressed in the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution. Alleghany County government will utilize all legal means necessary to protect the Second Amendment right of Alleghany County citizens, including but not limited to legal action. Adopted the third day of February, 2020.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we accept this resolution with the addition.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept this resolution with the second paragraph added to the resolution. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. I vote. We're going to sign this thing right in effective tonight. I'm going to pass this thing across the table right here.
Everybody can leave now.
Wait, hang on a minute. While we're going through this, hang on just a minute. While we're going through this, does any commissioners have anything they want to add?
You have to have that second paragraph put in there, then re-sign it.
We will.
You'll have to re-sign it.
No problem.
You're going to have to
Job.
sign it again.
I'm sorry?
We don't have any gold pens.
I'm sorry, I
any gold
didn't
pens.
pre-plan this.
These come from the our pens come from the Holiday Inn where we went to a
There you
meeting
go.
out of town.
Guys want to say anything?
I don't know, this one says stolen from the desk of.
On the website,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah.
Chair's going to call for a 10-minute recess this time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. We ready to go?
Trying to
Yeah,
get us
we'll,
ready.
we'll call the sheriff.
Make as many people mad as I can.
We'll call our meeting back to order. First up on the list is Miss Rita Miller,
Old finger.
number one.
Good evening.
Stephen,
So, the first meeting in February by statute, I have to come before you to get the advertising date set for the 2019 unpaid taxes. At that time, we typically run it the second or third week in April. So the unpaid tax as of the 27th of January was $617,568. We had a collection rate of 96.14. And so I'm requesting the board to give me the date for advertising the unpaid taxes.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Vote.
Did check to make sure my name wasn't on the list before it went out. So.
That was the first thing I checked, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, that's good.
A lot of the people on this list, that taxes start coming back in, you'll see a big jump in our collection rate as well also when we get ready to start, when we send out the advertising letters. So, and the next thing I need to do is set the dates for our 2020 Board of Equalization and Review hearings. Right now, we don't have anybody that we think is coming, but you never know. So
Okay,
we typically schedule 2 nights, and we set a starting time, but we don't usually set an ending time. That way, if nobody's coming, you don't have to
That's rather
sit here and wait.
right. Need to set the dates for this. What's the typical, I missed that a minute ago.
I think in the past, you've set like a Tuesday night and a Thursday night, but the dates is just whatever works best for you.
What's the feeling of the board?
Yeah.
But
Month we looking at?
Get it over with, April.
April,
The first,
you just said them, we'll be there.
about the 14th and the 16th. Will that work?
of April.
Yes, sir.
Here for me.
1830 hours.
16th won't work for
6:30.
me.
6:30?
I'm not here on the 16th. I'm gone.
He's not here on the 16th. Bobby's not. How many, you gotta have all commissioners there?
No, just need 3.
3.
We don't
Less
have
than the last
anyone
time.
contesting
You
at
good
this
not
time.
At this time, we don't have anybody coming.
Okay, we're good with that. 14th and 16th. Does that
14th,
suit everybody?
14th, 15th, I'm good.
14th and 16th.
16th.
16th, excuse me.
Gotta take 15th off, pay our taxes.
That's right, that is tax day, isn't it?
That's it.
Right, and that's all I have this evening.
Okay,
Board of
thank you.
Equalization.
Thank you.
Need a motion on that 14th and 16th? Okay, we do need a motion. I hear a motion to,
So moved.
Second.
motion second, all in favor, raise your right hand. 5-0, thank you.
Thank you.
Megan Edwards, Parks and Recreation. Talk about excavating bids and job description while you're up there.
So the bids that I got back, we received 3. The first one was from High Country Grading, and that bid was $8,250. The second was Brad Miller Construction, and that bid was $10,500. And the third one was S&T Grading, and that bid was $8,000. So I proposed that we accept the lowest bid of $8,000 because the quality of work they've done, and it's also the lowest bid.
Right. Do I hear a motion or any discussion to start with? Motion?
I will make that motion that we accept the bids, Mr. Chairman.
Motion second on the $8,000 bid from
S&T Grading.
CT Grading. Motion second, any further discussion? Not all in favor, raise your right hand. 5-0.
When are they gonna start?
Tomorrow.
In the morning,
That's quick enough.
6 p.m.
Also, with that bid, they gave us the option to do a box drain pipe and grate, as well as the seating. And they said if we bought the materials, they would do that labor free of charge. And so that's something that Josh and I have gone and looked at. And Josh is going to look at the pricing of the materials that he could get it for, but it's a good idea. It would really help out those two fields as far as drainage and things like that go.
We will get the seed and the materials they need.
Yes.
Will provide.
I spoke with Lance Murphy, who's the athletic director for the school, to see if they could maybe get the seating if we did the box drain and pipe. So he's going to speak with Mr. Beasley about them possibly paying for the seating since they're using the fields as well and kind of helping us out with that. So as soon as I hear back from that, I'll let you all know.
You run all this by the school system and everybody's on the same page?
Yes, I have permission in email format saying go ahead.
Chairman, just a curiosity, this thing you're talking about, what field is that?
It's the two lower ball fields behind the bus garage in Sparta Elementary School.
Okay. Need a motion to do that. The school will get back with us on, they may provide the materials. Y'all can just coordinate through the county manager, right? Hear that. Job description here. We all got our paper here for the, everybody looked over this? For the Parks and Recreation.
That'll come around.
You've been through it.
Yes, me, Josh, Mr. Carter, April all sat down together, went over it. Everybody's in agreement.
You're happy with
Yes,
it?
sir.
Okay. I hear a motion to accept this.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, raise your right hand. 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're down to the transfer facility.
And I can address that.
Yes, sir.
I would point out that Karen is in the room, but Karen had some dental work done earlier today, so she's with us in physical and spiritual today. But what this is on page 58, it's my understanding that commissioners entered into a lease finance for a piece of equipment at your transfer facility. And in an attempt to basically do some house cleaning, if you think back to your last meeting, you had your auditor here and she was going through all the intricacies of the audit. And in conversation with her, as I understand it, in the current budget, the lease payments only were accounted for within your budget. And that amount times 12 was your budgeted line amount. To make this correct is basically when you do that type of financing, you also have to account for the outright purchase and plan for the reimbursement, which is what this is. There's no change in dollars, it's an in and out, but you've got to account for the purchase and then you've got to factor in your lease payment, which was done. This is merely an attempt to clean up that. It amends your budget by that equivalent dollar mark. It does nothing more than it comes in and goes out, but it's a housekeeping measure.
Paperwork.
That's exactly right.
One of the findings from the auditor, I believe, and this is to correct that.
That's correct.
I would make a motion to accept.
Second.
A motion second. Any discussion? Not all in favor, raise your right hand. 5-0. Next up, talk about the budget committee, county manager.
Sir, as we've previously identified, a number of reasons. I believe that Alleghany County needs to needs to take a closer look at some of the budget as we move forward. We've heard examples of what those reasons may be, but in a proactive approach, kind of tossed out an idea about forming what I call a budget committee, which allows for a couple of the commissioners and some staff to come together. And, you know, this is my first one here, so what I'm bringing to this is some of my past experiences. And, you know, in our compiling of the budget information for this upcoming year, you know, I want to meet each department. I want to understand each department's request. I want to know why a certain dollar amount is in a line item. And by forming a committee, not only does it bring me up to speed, but it also helps to bring some of the commissioners up. It's not an attempt to create any type of issue or create some kind of thought that we're not trying to be, you know, fluid with everyone, but it allows more than just a manager or more than just a finance officer to be involved in these meetings and putting associated names and numbers and faces together. And I have found in the past that is a good combination to do that with. So, Chairman and I, we've had a conversation or two about it. Typically, where I'm associated coming from, it's typically your chairman and your vice chairman. And you know, in this instance, as you guys know, you not a 3-member, it's a 2-member here because of the number of commissioners. So I suggested the possibility of involving the chairman and the vice chairman in with these committees. I think from my standpoint, we're going to try to go twice a week for, you know, 3 to 4 hours. 4's on the heavy side, 3's on the likely side. After you look at those for so long, your I's get crossed and your T's get, you know, jotted. But that's just my opinion. That's what I have seen in the past. It works, and I'd like to throw that out for you guys to think about.
Thank you, sir. I like the idea, Jeff, and I've not done this before, but I think it's Mr. Michael's experience in budgeting all these years, and I think it's a good approach.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with that, but I would also like to point out, by having 2 members of the board on that committee, if one of the members of the board that is not on that committee attends, making it a majority, that we've got to be aware, we can attend as a spectator. We must not participate. And I'll read from the UNC School of Government that was in our file. Other council members are free to attend committee meetings as spectators. If they don't participate in the meeting, there is no reason to consider it a meeting of the council. Council members attending such meetings should be careful to avoid behaving in ways that create a perception that they are acting as a part of the committee or that in other ways suggests that a majority of the council is in effect doing the council's business without proper notice of a council meeting. So I agree, but we as members can attend, but we've got to remember that somehow or another, I got to keep my mouth shut.
And the meeting's also open to the public. Anybody can attend.
Right.
And minutes will be kept, and they'll be voted on.
Point there, Commissioner Irwin, about the 3.
We've got to understand that.
We've got to keep that in the back of our mind all the time.
No.
Yes, sir.
Just as a point of information or maybe a question at this point, as I read through that, under the circumstances being members of the board and county staff, that's all that would be on this. It wouldn't actually, the law I don't think would actually require it to be open public. I'm not advocating that we do or that we don't. I'm just saying I don't know that the law actually calls it to have to be.
Minutes must be kept, though.
Unofficial meeting.
Front page second to the last paragraph, about the last sentence.
If that's what it requires, that's what we'll do. If you so choose to set that up.
And then the minutes will have to be approved at one of our regular meetings. So the board doesn't approve the minutes.
Now that, correct
The
me?
minutes will be available to anybody.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, we would be making this an ad hoc committee, in other words, instead of a standing committee. Under Robert's Rules of Order, whenever they are done with the budget, they automatically go away.
Right, right.
It's one-year thing. Next
Yes.
year, we'll have to appoint another budget committee.
Dismantled at the end of the budget, when the budget's voted on, that committee would.
The only thing I would add to that, Commissioner Irwin, is next year, if we take the same approach, which I hope we will, that we once again entertain whomever the chair and vice chair is to continue that process.
And according to Robert's Rules of Order under committee reports, it wouldn't be minutes. The committee would report its findings.
Right.
To the board, yes.
In my mind, a report of that nature could simply be a statement of the departments that we had met with during that period in between, and, some simple information that accompanies each one of those departments.
Further questioning?
Chairman, I am all for it. I'm excited to hear it. Look forward to your all's work in that effort. I think it's wonderful going forward for the county. I would move to approve the committee.
Motion to approve? Second. A motion and a second. Any further discussion about appointing a committee, budget committee? All in favor, raise your right hand. 5-0. Okay, next up is Tiffany Boyer, Transportation Director.
Hello. I'm here today to request approval for 2 updated Alleghany in Motion policies. Both of these policies are required by the state in order to continue to receive our state and federal funds. The first is for our drug and alcohol second chance policy, and the second is for the Title VI program plan.
Policies coming from.
Sir.
No objection.
Chairman, I have no objections.
Any objection? Okay, I hear a motion.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion?
Consultants, you probably need to do those individually.
Oh, okay. We need to go.
Prefer it if you do it.
The drug and alcohol first. That's how you present.
Okay, drug and alcohol.
Yes, sir.
All in favor? Well, let's back up. Withdraw those 2 motions and let's start over. Drug and alcohol portion of this. Do I hear a motion to adopt that?
So move.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? If raise your 5-0. And what was the second part?
It's the Title VI program plan.
Title VI program plan. Conversation on that. It's the state.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, a second. Raise your right hand. 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nick Hawks.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I have told the chairman prior to the meeting that I have scar tissue that is pressing against a sciatic nerve from previous surgeries in my back. And there are times whenever the pain will get to the point where I need to get up. I am not storming out in a mad fit. And if I distract from you, I apologize, but I'm in a little bit of discomfort, sir.
So you're gonna stay in a mad fit?
No, a mad fit apparently is my normal disposition.
Make yourself comfortable over there.
I will. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me this evening. Usually I would speak without a lot of notes, but I had a lot of information that wanted to make sure that I got out there tonight. So I thought that I would just read it, and then if you have any questions, whatever, we'll talk about it. And if you have questions, you can stop me as well. So I would like to start by giving a little bit of history on some of the things that we have done, got going on in the office. But first and foremost, I want to acknowledge the great staff that we have working in the Communication Center. They are professional and very knowledgeable at what they do. They have received many hours of training and in numerous topics such as improving decision-making skills, critical incident management, suicide awareness and prevention, domestic violence calls, supporting public safety professionals, law enforcement intelligence updates, communicating with persons in crisis, handling difficult callers, civil liability, and special population callers, just to name a few. They are also certified telecommunicators, which is an 80-hour course instructed by the North Carolina Sheriff's Training and Standards Commission. But the sheriff has wanted more for our communication center. We believe that telecommunicators should be certified as emergency medical dispatchers. This additional knowledge and certification will bring our citizens a life-saving service. It has been a goal of the sheriff since he took office in 2014. And currently the sheriff is the only SO employee that has received an emergency medical dispatch certification. Shortly after taking office, he initiated conversation with then County Manager Don Adams, who at the time was resistant to the idea. After some time, Don came on board with the proposal, but by then Don had taken a job with another county. The sheriff again proposed the EMD idea, emergency medical dispatch idea, to County Manager Mike James. Mr. James was initially opposed to the idea as well, till he experienced an incident while at a conference where an emergency medical dispatcher had to direct someone to administer CPR. This incident saved the life of that individual and instantly changed Mike's philosophy toward emergency medical dispatch. Mike then contacted the sheriff stating his approval with the implementation of emergency medical dispatch. We placed the request to cover the additional staff and the second console, along with the emergency medical dispatch software, in the 1920 budget to make this program possible. But by the time the budget was approved, all of those items were removed either by the board or the manager. Now, North Carolina has passed a law requiring all county-operated 911 centers to have their telecommunicators certified as emergency medical dispatchers by July the 1st, 2020. Thereafter, any new telecommunicator has only a limited time to become certified. Over the past few months, I have been working with a company by the name of PowerPhone. They are the leading EMD service provider in North Carolina and one of only 2 companies that offer this service in the United States, at least that we are aware of. I have secured a bid at $53,299 from PowerPhone and also confirmed through the North Carolina 911 Board that $50,000 of the total 53 are 911 allowable funds, which means that the county will be responsible for the remaining approximately $3,000, give or take a couple of hundred. This quote included the software and install along with all the training and certifications to meet the North Carolina July the 1st certification mandate. This product will also communicate with our current CAD system and actually time and date stamp all the questions and answers generated through the EMD software in our CAD.
The dispatchers will have access to 24/7 support, blogs, and additional training. Not only will they be certified in emergency medical dispatch, but they will also receive a certification as a fire dispatcher and a law enforcement dispatcher, and they will be able to offer CPR through the Dispatch Communication Center online. When the county's communication center becomes an emergency medical dispatch, the recommended way of operating an EMD would be through a two-seat system. There are many reasons to have two on shift, but most importantly is when a dispatcher has answered a 911 call and began those protocols during a life-saving event, they would be unable to stop that process to answer additional 911 calls coming into the center during those times. But we recognize that this will require future conversations through county management and the board to weigh out the options and liabilities. This year, the Communication Center generated 13,613 calls for service in 2019. That does not include the numerous calls on non-emergency and administrative lines for general business. That is a little more than 37 emergency calls per day and almost 2 an hour. I also believe that if the county moves toward a two-seat system and the much-needed upgrades, the sheriff's office, unfortunately, would no longer be the ideal location for the center. The lack of space within our office would not allow for a two-seat system and would also be extremely expensive and nearly impossible to expand the current area. In its current location, the center is sitting in an adjacent room to the inmate booking and holding cells. This causes the dispatchers some grief and distractions due to the noise and sometimes chaos from unruly inmates. We believe the county should look at possibly moving the center to a larger facility, such as the new courthouse or EMS building, where it has room for growth and fewer distractions. We recognize that any upgrades to the center would come straight from the backs of taxpayers, with exception to equipment covered by the 911 board. I think we should all carefully weigh out the pros and cons of such a transition of the 911 center. I know this has been a lot of information to process and look forward to future conversations with regards to the direction of the Alleghany County Communication Center. Questions?
Any feel for the kind of cost we're talking about?
I have some numbers. I didn't. So tonight I wanted to talk to you specifically about the power phone. I do have those other numbers generally, and I have provided the county manager with some of those upfront numbers. What I am missing is the cost. I have spoke with a contractor to get a quote for the communication center. He has not provided that back. What I have is for the cost for 4 additional dispatchers, the cost for the console, the two-seat system, and what they would need to run it, along with power phone. I do not have costs for moving it from our facility and transferring it somewhere else.
Now, one of the things, Mr. Chairman, that we've got to look at, we asked if there's sufficient funds in our 911, because we're paying for that upgrade of the communication system, and that was taking a significant portion out of the 911. Is there enough in there?
So I've spoken with Ms. Karen about the $53,000 for the power phone, just specifically the emergency medical dispatch software.
Right.
There is sufficient funds to cover that. It looks as though we would come out of pocket about $3,000, and I think that we can do that within our budget at the office, so that we would not be requesting that remaining balance from the board.
We cannot draw from those 911 funds without permission of the state 911 board. I've contacted them.
I've been in contact with them, so we've traded some emails, and then I had a phone conversation with them because they did have a question about one of the allowable expenses, which was a $3,500 expense. And they indicated it's actually $3,850 was one of the expenses that they had in question. But during a phone conversation, they clarified it for me and said that they would do it. But I've been asked to go ahead and get an email stating that.
You be able to absorb the per diem whenever you started sending your dispatchers out for training?
So the great thing about that is all provided within this $53,000. To my understanding, they're going to come on site, they're going to train them here in the facility.
Thank you.
My concern is the staffing salaries. I think you get some double duty now. Is that correct?
So I think that's probably a conversation that you guys need to have along with the sheriff and whomever to decide that. Right now, we was just looking at meeting that mandate, so we're not requesting any type of staff at this time.
You said there's 2 companies that do the training.
There's 2 that I've heard of, and PowerPhone is the leading company in North Carolina. I've not seeked out this other company because it's the recommended one. PowerPhone is here in the state. They've been around a really long time. Maybe you was certified in 1995 by PowerPhone, so they're not a new company.
Track record, don't they?
Got a track record.
And you don't have a total cost of what it's going to cost the county with the moving to a new location and...
No, I do not. This is just for the software, which is a $53,000 software that provides these telecommunicators with the system that when somebody calls in, it's got the blocks that they go in, they ask these specific questions. It gives them different sets of questions depending on how they answer medically. I can't get into the breakdown of all of how that works, but I know every question that they answer generates a different question that the telecommunicators will ask them so that they can assist with the proper medical attention or whatever that they may need.
With the budget getting ready to start, when will you have a total cost of what you're going to ask the county for?
So we've already put in the budget that we're getting ready to turn in for the telecommunications officers and the cost of the second seat and the cost of the software. But the software we're looking in this year's budget, so that would be $53,000. That would not be in this upcoming budget.
And you mentioned the possibility of the new auxiliary courthouse.
Annex,
Of
yes.
moving them, I would assume, upstairs.
Yeah, that's something that I guess everybody needs to talk about. There's some time, so that's just a possibility along with EMS or another building,
Hear anything?
Couple of questions. Just what you're proposing to acquire this software, and it's going to help us to meet the mandate.
Yes.
So I know there's kind of been some back and forth, and when this mandate first come out, regardless of it, I think we all agree that we need to go in that direction. Is that going to? Are we going to be able to implement that into the space we have with one seat and meet that requirement?
So we can meet the mandate where it's at as far as the certification. I can't speak
So
to...
say maybe the first step of this is you're proposing is get the software in, get the training, and try to look at the next step maybe being in the next budget, expanding with personnel, moving possibly, or whatever the feasibility study tells us that where we need to go and how much more personnel we're looking at this thing. Are you looking at 2 phases? I mean, trying to go ahead and do this software now?
Right now, we initially want to get the software in so that we can get everyone certified and get it started.
Well, if we purchase after that, what about future hires? How is there a cost? Will they continue to train? Are they just going to train our staff? Is there an annual maintenance cost to this?
So there is an annual maintenance. There is annual maintenance, which is fairly low, $3,000 to $5,000 range a year. So the upfront cost is the big one. But then, so each year.
With that annual cost, will it include training, or do you know the answer?
Yeah, they have access to continuous training. Every night, that if a dispatcher gets a little downtime, then they've got the opportunities to go in and to take additional training. There's live blogs in there between these different places, and so they can keep up with what's going on and what's trending, and they can receive help within the system.
Chairman, Sheriff and Nick, we've had communication about this, and to answer your question, Commissioner Evans, the only way I think that we would, we're trying to implement this in a phasing pattern. What makes it easy to tackle this front piece is one, the state availability of funds, and two, the possibility or the existence of utilizing existing funds to cover that $3,000 difference. So that's phase one. That's what's before you tonight, or at least to discuss tonight. 2 and 3, I think, was alluded to, but it's a matter of chicken or the egg. But you've got to determine that, and that's what we get over the next few months, is to be able to put this thing into a more thought process, a bigger pattern, a way to see if it's 1 or 2 budget cycles or what that may be. But ideally get into that implementation, which includes up to the cost of moving and that such. But certainly this portion tonight is now, and then we all talk about now and then. This is the now. The latter steps are the then. So hopefully this gives us a pattern to get to where we need to get to. No?
Sir.
How would the board feel about sitting down in a work session and discussing this and the whole system, time frame laid out?
We will be discussing this in a little later. It's on the agenda. But I think this is something that we're going to have to look at because, and Nick has stolen part of my thunder and my ammunition by bringing it up, but one of the things that we have to look at is how many people we are going to hire, because we've got to hire people, and we do have to change location because it'll be a minimum of 2. If we have a dispatcher that is on the line with a medical emergency and someone comes to the door and picks up the phone right now, but they're acting as receptionists. They can't stop to see what's going on at the door. You've got to have 2 in that position. So now we're looking at, you've got 4 shifts. We're looking at an additional 4 people that's going to be hired. Then where do we put them? Because we don't have enough room in that facility for 2 working at any one time, because they must have independent access to both the 911 and the EMD, because both dispatchers will have certification as an EMD. They don't know when a call's coming in, if it's going to be a medical emergency or a man with a gun. The location that they are in right now is not an ideal location. I sat in that office and did the training, went to, I can't remember, I think Hickory, whenever I got the certification to be a dispatcher. And then shortly after that, things changed and I didn't go through. But I sat in there for, I believe, about 6 weeks, and I saw what went on. They bring a drunk in and he's being rambunctious. They are right there. And you get into it, the dispatcher has to shut the door, and hopefully it's before they get inside and people started running around. So here again, it is an unfunded mandate, but correct me if I'm not wrong, if I'm wrong, but I believe there's only 4 counties in the state of North Carolina that doesn't have EMD at this time.
There's very few counties. It's in the low single digits.
Right. I heard 4. This is why it is being mandated. 6. An updated, okay, 6. So there's 6 counties that doesn't have this. Now it is being mandated on us. This is another one of those. They didn't offer us any money to make it happen, but it's hitting us this year and it's going to hit us next year. If we can get by with $3,000 and the sheriff can take it out of his budget, it's going to be a godsend. But whenever we started working the budget, we're going to have to determine how many more. If we move dispatch, better known as PSAP, If we move it, then the sheriff is also going to have is going to come in because he needs someone to be able to operate that door. Because now that front door is locked. Somebody's got to be able to pick up a phone. Can't be a jailer in the back because at night, you've only got 2 jailers, if I'm correct. So this is something that we're going to have to discuss, and I was going to lay this out later on in the agenda, but, and I've got more to put in there for my argument, okay. But we're going to have to think serious about this. Part of it is going to happen. There's no way that we can avoid it.
What do you need from us tonight, Nick?
I just wanted to update you. I think the next meeting that you have, Ms. Evans will be in front of you requesting the budget amendment to.
Presentation, good information. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one other question or thought, and I don't know the terminology to this, but as I understand it, there's some changes in the state coming. Database, there's going to be it's going to house this, and all going to be able to have access to it. Are you familiar with that, and what kind of
the statewide PSAP? Yes,
it's going to be the secondary PSAP.
Yeah. There was
so this push that we just went through, and this money that it cost us, that they mandated us and made us put in a secondary PSAP. In fact, as we were finishing that up, this new thought process was in the pipeline. That's going to become basically already obsolete if this Nexus system, once it hits, then you may call, somebody in the county may call in, and it could be somebody at the coast answering the call and just sending the.
And it's set up.
I understand just a very generalized description of how it works. But, I mean, we'll have to have our own, but our backup then would be somewhere else. So if we did look at our backup location now, then when that hits, we'll be in compliance.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Evans is correct on that, but one thing that whenever they briefed us, they stated that they would pick up the outstanding debt. Our priority is so low, we'll already have paid it off by the time we get around to us. This is going to be an immediate thing because it's going to have to go over fiber optic, and we've got a dead space right around Glade Valley Flats that they're going to have to put into fiber optic. So
problems. Anything? Any more questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it.
thank you, Nick.
Good job. Public comment time. Anybody have any comments from the citizens they want to? Crowd has diminished.
Brian, did you run everybody off?
None of these ladies sitting back there in the back won't say nothing now. We'll move on to county manager comments.
Members, I only have 2 that I'd like to mention. One of the last meetings, we actually had some discussion about a well site out at the fairgrounds. You all remember that conversation? Just to mention that Drew and myself and Brian from the town, we've had at least a preliminary meeting to talk about that. We're trying to work out a few of the details, but I did want to follow up and let you know that there has been communication from both sides. For the next week to 2 weeks, hopefully a little more details will come out. We can talk a little more openly about that. The second one also kind of flashes back. I'm 4 weeks old today, so I'm feeling it's my birthday, 4 weeks old. So one of my first meetings, you had in your packet an inspection from the North Carolina DEQ of your transfer facility. So in reading that, of course, there were some items that were identified, and I've actually, Drew has been really good. She actually think she actually knew it, she just didn't tell me, but when she took me to the transfer facility the first time, you never guessed who's waiting in the scale house over there. It was a North Carolina inspector. And, you know, I call that a coincidence, I don't know, but real nice fella, and I'm gonna mention his name just in case he's watching. It's Charles Gerstel, and he and I have kind of emailed back and forth ever since, and I come from that world, so I know a little bit about all that. But he actually, he sent me one today, and I had mentioned to him that I'd like to have the opportunity over the next month, respecting his time and what he does, for us to sit down and talk in a little more detail about that facility and how that we can reach compliance, not by coincidence, but by true intent. And he actually threw out a few days today, and he and I are going to get together about the middle of this month, and we're going to have a good conversation. So also I'll have Josh Green there as well, and I'd like to have Drew back in the conversation. But you know, it's those things that you work on, you correct, you implement, and you move forward. So those are just kind of little progression things that I wanted to mention to you.
Appreciate that.
Can you go out there on a rainy day?
Yeah, can, absolutely.
Moving on, next be County Commissioner comments, and I'll start to my left. Commissioner Irwin.
Yes, Nick has touched on the piece. I'll refer to dispatch as PSAP. One of the things that we have got to look at, especially with EMD coming on board, is, in my opinion, the PSAP, the primary PSAP dispatch. That facility supports a number of organizations with calls, taking the emergency calls. And I jotted down a few. The Sheriff's Department, Sparta Police Department, EMS, the volunteer fire departments, the Rescue Squad, Wildlife Service, Forest Service, and the Highway Patrol. They are interacting with all of these agencies. Right now, they are under the control of the sheriff. Whenever we go to EMD, now we are taking the load on of medical advice. Now, granted, it's going to be through software, but we are moving away from the law enforcement arena. In larger counties, these departments would have their own communication system. They would not be combined. So we are going to have to look at this, and I know the sheriff enforces the laws of the great state of North Carolina and federal jurisdiction. That is his primary focus. But whenever you start looking at it, the communications with all these other agencies, now with the additional burden. Our location is not sustainable. If it remains in the sheriff's department, we can't put two people in there with all that computer equipment because it's a small place. And I don't believe that we could expand it in its current location because it would be expensive, to say the least. Secondary PSAP, during the transition, we do have a secondary location. The equipment is there, it's set up. The only question is, if we move it to the EMS building, would that space be sufficient, and where would we put their supervisor? We also have an additional question, which frankly, the first that I heard of it, whenever I was discussing this with Miss Edwards, the emergency generator is outside the room where the equipment is right now. If we have an event where we lose power and that emergency generator comes on, we may not be able to hear ourselves think, and much less the dispatchers be able to utilize it. Because we have never been in that room that I'm aware of whenever that generator's turned on. Now, once a month that generator does turn on, but it's always in the middle of the night so that it will disturb as few people as possible. So, and to add to the difficulty, if we are going to move the dispatch from the sheriff's domain, We cannot do anything until the state 911 comes up, looks and sees what we're going to do and blesses it. Now, I don't think they're going to bring holy oil or any holy water, but they have got a control on that. They've got to approve it. Part of the problem and the reason why we are in the location we are is we could run fiber optic in there. We cannot use copper. It's got to be fiber optic for the data. Now, sometime in the future, if the Nessus, N-S-I-S, I believe, is the terminology of the system, where the state of North Carolina will provide the backup, well, that will help. But that's on the horizon because we're so low down in the connectivity problems that we've got. Nick covered the certification process that we have to do. We are under a guideline. 1 July will be here before we know it. And so I would recommend that we start a discussion, sit down, look at this, and see if that's what we want to do. If I was wearing the badge that the sheriff was, I would be more than willing to get that one additional responsibility off, because you've certainly got enough trying to enforce the laws that are on the books. I mean, I don't know how you do it, especially with the situation that we've got with the state penal system. They're out before you can get them processed in. That's all the comments that I have in that regard. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your indulgence to the board.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Prince.
In our last meeting, we talked about the fund balance, and it was not a fun conversation. There were some comments made that we had been careless or willy-nilly in spending. That is not true, in my opinion. I completely support the decisions we made on the things that we approved in the budgets and the things that we approved that was outside the budget. There was something mentioned that we needed people from the state to come in and help us manage it. I trust Karen. We've got a good group. We got a new manager that knows what he's doing. And so I think those comments were not fair to the commissioners in the public arena. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Prince. Commissioner Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things. I serve on the steering committee, one of the steering committees with the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners for Justice and Public Safety, and it was attended one this past Wednesday, and lo and behold, there was some folks on there, and the discussion was centered around fire departments, fire tax, fire challenges, volunteer challenges around that. There was Kara Malonzi from the School of Government who spoke on the legal elements, components of it. And then a Vernon Ward with the, he was actually a senior field inspector from the State Fire Marshal's office. A lot of good insight, and I really would encourage us to reach out and see if we could get at least Vernon here. He is actually himself a 30, 40-year fireman, and he has seen the changes across the state and what we're fixing to face. They may could really give us some insight as we're sitting here on the cusp of making some potential changes in what we're looking at. Some very eye-opening information. In fact, one thing I did make a note of, one of the challenges I know we have, everybody has, is with the number of volunteers that they have on their roster. And in 18, he said they lowered that requirement down to 15. That's what I recall. That's what I think I heard. I wouldn't put that out for a fact. Anybody needs to check on that. But that may help to kind of diminish the challenges for a little while. But they recognize there's challenges, and there are different things that are going on out there that it may behoove us to try to reach out and kind of get them on in here if we can, because right now it's just timing of it. I'd seen the agenda, but I wasn't sure who was coming, but it was really very insightful. The other item I wanted to mention is Saturday, this past Saturday, Alleghany Lives, in coordination with Via Health, had a screening of a documentary of the ripple effect, which was on suicide. young man by the name of Kevin Hines attempted unsuccessfully to take his life by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. And he has basically, that day till now, which has been 15 or more years, has went out and been an advocate and tried to help the community. It's very insightful, very moving. I would encourage anybody, if you get a chance, to watch that. But I would just share one quick thing that he said was just as he was on the bridge, he was hoping that someone would just say, just walk up to him and say, "Are you okay?" And someone did. Someone walked up to him, got his attention, and said, "Would you take my picture?" She left happy with a happy memory, and then he attempted to take his life and did jump, but he actually survived, broke his lower back and an ankle or something. But it's a very moving, very touching, but out of it is, you just never know what people are going through. You really don't. I mean, some of us can put on a really good act. Just a smile and a friendly gesture sometimes could mean all the difference in the world to somebody. So I just encourage us to go out and keep that in mind. And if you get a chance to watch that, like I said, it's called The Ripple Effect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Evans. Commissioner Evans.
Just a few quick things. One thing that Mark touched on and was talked about earlier tonight is suicide. And recently at a health department meeting, we had information handed out where we handled Alleghany, Ashe, and Watauga County. And this was a survey done in 2019 at Alleghany. It says Alleghany High School, but I believe it was 7 through 12, but it may have been 9 through 12. During the past 12 months, this was a question in the survey. During the past 12 months, did you ever seriously consider attempting suicide? 19.4% of the students said yes. That bothered me. And the next question was, during the past 12 months, did you make a plan about how to commit suicide? 18.5% said yes. That making a plan, that one really caught my attention. That's a terrible number. I don't know how to solve the problem, but like Mark said, if you see somebody in distress or something, just reach out and talk to them and see. And this one really got me. During the past 12 months, how many times did you actually attempt suicide? 9.1%. That's a terrible number. We've got to, I don't know how to handle the problem. We have professionals that deal with it. If you see somebody, like Bob was talking about, like Mark was talking about, if you see somebody, just reach out and just talk to them. The other thing is, the Fairgrounds Committee, either on the 29th or the 29th of February or possibly the 7th of March, is going to have a volunteer cleanup day at the fairgrounds. So anybody who wants to come out and work for a few hours, we'd be more than happy to have your help. And on the 18th of this month, the Ag Dinner for Agriculture is being held out in Glade Valley at
Alexander Hall.
Silver Dollar.
Alexander Hall.
Yeah, Alexander Hall.
So it's been moved.
2 years ago, we started out with about 100 people. Last year, it grew to 150. Right now, we've already printed 335 tickets. That's why we had to move. If you don't have a ticket, just keep asking around. You might be able to find one. It's a great evening to showcase Alleghany County and the farmers in the county. I hope we're going to have a good slate of speakers. I hope we can see all of you out there. That's all I got.
Just to add a little to that, we're moving from the Pew Center, like Bobby said, to the Alexander Hall, which is the old Glade Valley School, as most of us would recognize it. And That's where the location is. Other comment I want to make is our joint meeting with the town council and the board of commissioners will be March the 30th. 6:30 held in this room right here. That happens every fifth Monday, 2 or 3 times a year. That's coming up, and we'll host them down here. That's about it for me. Everything else been covered. I'd just like to say that I really appreciate the folks coming out tonight for our Second Amendment resolution deal and showing support for them. They showed it to us, we showed it to them, and for everybody that spoke, I really appreciate the pros and the cons, and everybody walked out here happy tonight. We thank everybody for that. That's all I have.
Mr. Chairman, what time will that meeting be? Your time?
6:30, yeah. Just like to thank the commissioners for a good meeting tonight, and we accomplished a whole lot. And,
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Motion and a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank y'all.